Hello there, my name's Scott and today I'm going to be doing a review on the Penelope V2 which I received from www.e-smokeguru.gr. Before I start I must point out I did receive it free of charge for the purpose of conducting a review, but my opinion of the product remained true, honest and accurate as always. Okay, let's go straight ahead and show you in a bit more detail. Okay, so here I have the Penelope V2, and when you get this you're also going to get included a bag containing some silica wick, and according to my measurements I'm measuring the wick as being 2mm in diameter. They also include a spare O-ring if you feel you need to make the air control tighter. I've not had any issues with the air control, so I've not had the need to use it. And I can't actually show you it because I've already used it, but they also include a rather stingy helping of a whole 1 pre-made wire. Okay, so I've already reviewed the Penelope V1 in the past, so I think for this video I'm going to concentrate on the noticeable differences and improvements that I've encountered when using the V2. So what I'm going to do is give you some very quick basic information about the Penelope V2, then I'm going to grab hold of the V1, strip that down and show you what those differences and improvements are, and then finally I will show you how I've been getting this one all set up. Okay, so the Penelope V2 is a silica based atomizer made out of stainless steel, and as with all GG products you know exactly what you're going to be getting, something that's made up of lots of sort of intricate little parts, but when it's all put together works extremely well, is built to last and is machined to a very high standard. It's 17mm in diameter, uses a 510 connection with an adjustable centre pin, and as you can see on either side you also have these 2 slots cut out, and this means you can have it sitting completely flush on your device and you're still going to get plenty of airflow. Just above the connector, going around the outside of the base, you're going to find the GG logo very nicely engraved, and then on the reverse side you're going to find your serial number. Now where you have those 2 air slots, you also have these little channels just above them, and these are really handy for getting a good grip when it comes to taking things apart. The tank is also made out of stainless steel and holds around 4ml of e-liquid, and I like how the top cap also has these 2 slots cut out which allow you to get a good grip when it comes to taking things apart, and I love how they've managed to line up the slots in the top cap with the bottom cap absolutely perfectly. And then finally on top you have your mouthpiece, which is also going to act as your juice control, so you can actually control how much e-liquid is going to reach the coils. And it's also going to act as your airflow control as well, just by sort of twisting this around you can actually adjust the airflow. Now you may be thinking, oh it's another sort of fixed mouthpiece, you can't use your own drip tip. Well you can, all you need to do is unscrew that and make your own drip tip in the top. Okay, so I'm going to start off then by showing you around the outside of the 2 different versions of the Penelope, and showing you the differences that I've encountered. Now this one here is my Penelope V1, and I have brushed this myself, so normally it would be a polished finish the same as this, but I have brushed that myself, so that's the difference there. Now obviously the first thing you may be able to notice is that the Penelope V2 is slightly longer in length by around sort of 2mm, and obviously the engraving has been sort of shrunk in size as well. So rather than then having the engraving going down the body of the tank, it's now at the base, it's a lot smaller. Now personally I really like the engraving on the V1. I thought it was quite sort of subtle, especially after it's been brushed, because it does tend to sort of tone the blackness of it down, and I think it looks fantastic on the V1. However, I know a lot of people don't like too much engraving, so they'll probably be quite happy with the sort of shrunk down version on the V2. The next difference, and I'm going to say also improvement, is the fact that the V2 has these 2 air channels cut out. With the V1 there's no air channels, so this meant no matter what device you used it on, you always had to leave a slight gap between the base of the atomizer and your mod to allow for airflow, whereas on the V2, where you've got these 2 air slots, airflow isn't an issue anymore. On the V1 you had a fixed centre pin, whereas on the V2 it's now an adjustable centre pin, and again this makes it really easy when it comes to setting it up, and also from switching from one device to another. Now at the moment both of these mouthpieces are screwed down as far as they will go, and as you can hopefully see the V1 mouthpiece is slightly longer in length compared to the V2. Now with the V1 it controlled the juice, and that was pretty much it, and it was also a fixed mouthpiece, so if you didn't like the mouthpiece you wasn't able to use your own drip tip, whereas with the V2 it's going to act as your juice control, your airflow control, and you can also use your own drip tip as well, which is a big improvement in my book. Now the juice control is obviously just done in the same way, just by twisting this up or down, and I will show you that a little bit later on. But the airflow control is quite interesting, so I'm going to quickly show you that now. Okay, so right in the very top of the mouthpiece, you're going to find this additional piece, and it's quite hard to explain how it works. We've got the double O-rings there to form a nice tight seal. You then have this slightly odd sort of cutaway half screw, I suppose you call it, and on either side you have two little holes which are sort of angled going into the mouthpiece, and you put that into the top, and if you screw this all the way down to the very bottom, then basically that's the airflow completely shut off. You know, you can suck as hard as you like and nothing's going to come out, so to speak. And then as you unscrew this, the more you unscrew it, the airier the drawer becomes, and it does work really well. Very sort of simple in design, but you know, very effective. And like I said, if you don't like using the fixed mouthpiece, you can unscrew it totally and take your favourite drip tip and whack that in the top. Now, one other really big improvement for me on the V2 is the addition of those channels that have been cut out of the top cap and the base section, simply because they allow you to get a really good grip when it comes to taking things apart. Now, the V1 doesn't have any channels or nothing to sort of get a good grip with, especially when it's a polished version, which can be quite sort of slippery to the touch, especially if you just moisturise your hands as well. So having those channels cut out there really does make a massive difference. Okay, so on this side I have the parts from the Penelope V1, and on this side I've got the parts from the Penelope V2. Now when it comes to the top cap, there's not a massive amount of difference between them, other than the fact the V2 version has the additional channels cut out along the side there. And you know, like I said, it does make a big difference when it comes to trying to take things apart, as they are very handy for getting a good grip. Now the actual tank section of the V1 and V2 seem to be pretty much identical in length. However, the V2, which is on this side here, does have a wider opening at the top there compared to the V1. And there is a specific reason for that, and I'll show you that in a second. Now the V2 mouthpiece, which is on this side here, also has the addition of an airflow control, whereas the V1 doesn't. The actual part which goes over the top of the coils is slightly longer in length, and if you look at the V1 you can see that the midsection is sort of triangular shaped, whereas on the V2 it's circular. Okay, so we know that the difference between the top caps is the channel here, so obviously that's a benefit because it makes it a little bit easier to grip. For all about the other sort of subtle changes with regards to the V2 tank being slightly wider at the top, and also the V2 mouthpiece having a sort of circular midriff compared to the sort of triangle shape. Well, on the V2 you can do this. Let's say for example you want to take out the mouthpiece and have a good look at the coils without removing the tank. What you can do is undo the top cap, pour out your e-liquid into another bottle, then remove the actual mouthpiece. And then once that's removed, you can look down the bottom there and see your coils and do a few test fires, etc. Okay, so let's repeat that scenario, but with the V1 version of the Penelope. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the top cap. Then if I had any e-liquid in the tank, I'd obviously pour it out into another container. And then I'd remove the mouthpiece. Except you can't, because where it's narrower at the top and you have those sort of triangulated fins, I suppose you call them, it obviously catches and prevents it from being removed. So in other words, if you wanted to check your coils, you'd have to remove the whole lot to be able to actually get down to them. So again, it's just some nice little sort of differences between the V2 and the V1. Okay, so on this side I have the parts which make up the base section of the Penelope V1. And on this side I had the parts to make up the base section on the Penelope V2. Now the actual base itself does have a few little differences. For starters, you have those additional sort of channels cut along the side so you can get a better grip. You also have the engraving, and of course you also have the slots cut out for airflow. Now these parts here are used for installing your wick and coil. Again, the V1 on this side, V2 on this side. And there are several more subtle changes between the V1 and the V2, but for me the most beneficial, without a doubt, is the adjustable centre pin here, which means you can transfer the Penelope onto one device to the next without any problems whatsoever. Whereas compared to the V1, it was a little bit of a pain where it has the fixed centre pin, because you could get it all set up nicely with one device, go to put it on something else, and you'd either not get a connection or you'd lose your airflow gap, etc, etc. Second big improvement is that the V2 doesn't have this locking ring. Now this ring was used for trapping the negative wire on the V1, and the problem was that if you didn't do it up as tight as you could possibly go, it would leave a minute little gap, which was just enough to allow a little bit of juice to sort of come in, and sometimes you would get a little bit of flooding. Whereas on the V2 it's now trapped underneath this sort of a delve-in piece here, and it's just a lot more efficient. It's a lot easier to set up, and no chance of flooding at all. Now the Penelope V2 does still use the combination of no resistance and resistance wire, unfortunately, which is a bit of a shame, but there you go. Now I'm not going to show you that part of the sort of build process because there's tons of tutorials on YouTube on how to do it. If you look at my old reviews on the Penelope, the Odysseus, then I'll show you how to manually join the wires there. And if you want an actual gadget to weld the wires for you, then check out my review on the Zapper V2. So just to sort of speed things along, what I've done is I've just taken 2 pieces of the supplied wick, cut them at around sort of 9 centimeters long each. Then I've got some 0.20mm canthal, wrapped a few turns around it. And then I simply attach the no resistance wire to the coil using my zapper. And then, as you can hopefully see, I've just pushed it into the 2 channels on each side of the ceramic. Now, as you can see, on one side you can see part of the ceramic housing, whereas on the other side it's a sort of metal channel. Now this side is going to be the negative, so what you're going to do is just hold everything in place. As you can see there, I've just sort of wedged the 2 pieces of wick with the coil in the middle right down those 2 channels. Just going to hold that in place, and then take the negative wire, wrap it around this nut here, and then tighten it up. And then for the positive connection, you're going to wrap it around this shaft here and trap it in between that little silver nut and the O-ring. To remove the excess pieces of wire, on this one I'm just going to give it a bit of a spin. It should snap off nice and clean. But on this one here I'm going to use a pair of clippers. And then just make sure it's nicely tucked away. For the next step, I'm going to take a pair of cutters and trim the top wick off, just so it's level with the outside edge. I'm then going to push the wick into the channels on either side, hold it in position, take a pair of cutters, and then cut the wick off just right at the very bottom of that O-ring. And then for the next step, I'm going to take the whole thing and screw it into the base. And you can screw it down until it's really nice and tight. Now before I go any further, I just want to make sure that my coils are going to all fire up nicely. And whilst I'm doing that, I can also demonstrate how the centre pin is going to automatically adjust for the mod. So what I'm going to do is just place my finger on there, give it a few turns, just so it's all sticking out a little bit. I'm going to screw it onto my GG Stealth here. And there I can feel it's a bit of a resistance, so in other words that centre pin has made contact with the centre pin on my Stealth. So I'm just going to back it off and then screw it up. And keep on doing that until it's all the way down. Don't press the fire button while you're doing that, of course, like what I've just done. And now it's all the way down to the bottom there, no gaps whatsoever. I'm still going to get plenty of airflow, and also know I'm getting a good connection. And hopefully when I press the button, it should fire up, which it seems to be doing nicely. Once you know that everything's all firing up properly, you then take a bottle of e-liquid and just prime the wick. For the next step, you can add the mouthpiece, and it's just going to go over the top and screw down. And hopefully this will give you a good idea of how the juice control works. So if you want less flow of e-liquid onto the coils, you just close it off. If you want more juice to flow up to the coils, you just open it up and expose more of the wick. Once that's in place, you can then take the tank, slide it over the top and screw it all the way down. And take your bottle of e-liquid and fill the tank up. And finish it off by attaching the top cap and screwing it all the way down nice and tight. Okay, so that was the Penelope V2. Let's go ahead and see what it vapes like. Okay, so that was the Penelope V2, and what I'll do now is go ahead and show you in action. So I'm going to be using my little GG Stealth. The battery came with the charger around sort of 20-25 minutes ago. Just had a nice cup of coffee and a vape, so it's dropped down a little bit, I'd imagine. Still probably going to be reading around sort of 4 volts. The resistance of the coil has come out at 1.4 ohms according to one of my DNA 20 mods. And the tank has been filled up with some 18mg strength tobacco flavoured e-liquid, and it's just a PG based e-liquid. Okay, so this is the Penelope V2. As you see, like vapor wise, getting plenty of vapour out of it. Like I always say, just bear in mind that the amount of vapour you're going to get will be very much dependent on how you actually got it set up with regards to what sort of resistance the coil has come out to, what sort of voltage or wattage you're pushing through the coil, type of e-liquid, etc, etc. But nevertheless, what the step I've got here, getting plenty of vapour. And in terms of sort of performance, you know, there's no difference really between the V2 and the V1. You know, the vapour production is around the same, the flavour, you know, still great, but still around the same as the V1, throw hit, etc, etc. So in terms of actual sort of physical vapour production and performance in general, there's no difference really between V1 and V2. What it all comes down to is that the V2 is so much more simpler to sort of get set up. It's so much nicer to be able to just switch devices, because on the V1 we have that fixed centre pin which you have to sort of set on during the build process. Basically, you can get it all set up really nicely on one sort of specific mod, so you've got just the right amount of airflow there, little gap underneath it, you know, it's making a good connection, so you know it's vaping nicely. But then if during the day you want to switch it over to another device, 9 times out of 10 you've got to sort of rebuild it basically, because you know you could screw it onto another device, and if that centre pin is sort of slightly higher or lower, it could be a case of, you know, you're cutting off that gap, so you're not getting any airflow. The gap may be sort of twice as much, so you're getting sort of twice the amount of airflow that you don't want. Or even the case that the centre pin isn't actually making contact. So like I said, with the V1, 9 times out of 10 you are having to sort of strip it right down and almost do the whole build process again. Whereas on this one, you know, you can take this off the GG Stealth, put it onto something else, just make a little adjustment to the brass centre pin, screw it on, it automatically adjusts to the right thing, to the right height, should I say, rather than thing. You haven't got to worry about sort of leaving a gap for airflow, so it's a lot more easier to be able to sort of switch it over from one device to the next. In terms of setup as well, I think it's a lot easier to set it up on the V2 compared to the V1. You've still got the scenario of having to use resistance and no resistance wire, which you know, it is a bit of a pain in the arse. I know EMEA will not agree with me, but compare it to something which doesn't use no resistance wire, then obviously it is a lot more time consuming. There's no sort of no two ways about it. Good thing though, these days there's a lot of websites selling pre-built or ready-made wires, so you haven't got to really sort of worry about that. You know, they're very cheap. You can go along and buy, I don't know, sort of, I think it's about, I don't want to say the price actually because I can't remember now, but I'm vaguely thinking around 20 for £1 if you look around, and that rhymes, but I may be completely wrong there. But what I tend to do is I've got a Zapper V2, so if I use one of these and I just make up my own wires, you just got to touch the wires together and it basically just welds them for you. So like I said, compared to just using an atomizer where it only uses resistance wire, then you know it is a little bit more hassle. So it would be nice if they could get rid of that no resistance wire. Now I have got a review coming up from the an update of the Ithaca, which is basically a drop-in sort of part which removes the need to use no resistance wires. So hopefully they might be able to do something like that for the Penelope as well, which you know would definitely make it a lot more simpler to set up. But in terms of setting up, compare the V2 to the V1, the V2 is definitely a lot easier. And I like the fact that you got rid of that sort of locking ring, which is normally used for trapping a negative wire, because sometimes, you know, you think you've done it up as tight as you possibly can, but if it's just not quite tight enough, it only needs a little tiny little minuscule gap going around there, and it's enough to allow a little bit of juice to leak in, and that's it. You might get the older ceramic starting to fill up with e-liquid and flooding it. So where you've got rid of that now, you know, the chances of it having any sort of floods is sort of pretty minimal, really. I've not had any floods at all using the V2 either. I'm sure a lot of people will be really happy to hear that you can use your own drip tip in there. I know on the V1 you've got the fixed mouthpiece. It's quite a nice mouthpiece to use, but you know, at the end of the day I think people do like to use their own sort of favourite drip tips. Whereas on the V2 you can do that. Also you have the sort of airflow adjustment. So at the moment, if I screw this all the way up, you know, I could, like I said in the close-up shot, I can suck that all day and nothing's going to come out. And so you can just basically just adjust the amount of airflow. So if I unscrew it a few turns, you can just about hear some sort of air coming through, but it's going to be a pretty tight draw. A little bit more, a little bit looser, a little bit looser, and then a nice sort of quite sort of wide open airy draw. I think even in its most sort of open position, if I get right onto the very last thread, you know, it's a fairly loose draw in that sort of open position, but you know, I've had looser, let's put it that way. And like I said, you know, if you don't fancy using that mouthpiece, just got to pull out that little bit, whack your own drip tip in there, and that's it, you're good to go. And to be quite honest, I have been mainly using it with my own sort of drip tips in there. You know, the build quality of the GGs, like any sort of GG product that you get, it's always going to be very good quality. You know, they're built to last. They are made up of lots of different sort of little tiny pieces now, quite sort of intricate little parts. But that's the beauty of the GG, is that once all those little parts go together, it still works, you know. And sometimes, you know, I see some of the new sort of GG stuff comes out, and the Imio's got a video up with all like the 1001 O-rings and different parts all laid out. And I look at it and I think, how did he sort of come up with that in his brain, and to sort of think of all those different parts, but when they all go together, it still actually works. You know, I think that's you know, very clever indeed, really. A lot of the time, it does seem to be a little bit overkill, but nevertheless, so once it's all put together, it does still work really well. And like I said, you know, they are built to last a lifetime. The machine is very good quality, and you always know exactly what you're going to get with anything from the GG range. I really don't know what else I can really tell you, because in terms of performance, like I said, no different between the V1 and V2 in my opinion, but definitely there has been some sort of quite big improvements from the on the V2 compared to the V1, mainly to do with just the ease of setup and the fact you can use your own drip tip. You've got the airflow control there. And also, for me, the best one is the fact that you can just sort of switch devices quite easily without having to go through the whole build-up process again. Okay, guys, you know, if you do fancy trying one of these out for yourself, go along to www.e-smokeguru.gr. Thank you very much for watching. Also come along and visit my website at www.e-cig-reviews.com. It's e-cig-reviews.com. Cheers guys, happy vaping. See you later.